recent U.S. and allied NATO military buildup in Eastern Europe, to the extent where there are simultaneously, or practically so, three major war games occurring. So-called Saber Strike, which is occurring in the greater Baltic region, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Germany. The Baltics operation, Baltops, an annual military exercise of some scope, which includes 100 warplanes and warships, as well as a submarine, and an exercise including in parts of Sweden, called Arctic Challenge within the Arctic Circle, which includes 115 warplanes. So what we're seeing is not only the permanent shift or deployment of U.S. and other NATO military hardware to basically the entire western periphery of Russia, that is Norway, the Baltic states, to a degree even Finland, Poland, then across in the Black Sea and Bulgaria and Romania. We're seeing a massive buildup by the U.S. and other NATO forces, clearly, incontrovertibly aimed at Russia. As a matter of fact, statements have emanated recently during the Saber Strike war games yesterday or the preceding day. A Polish defense or military official, I'm not sure which now, issued a pretty provocative statement saying the post-World War II period of peace is over. I don't know how else to construe that statement but to suggest we're now at war. That is, that Europe is at war again for the first time since the end of the Second World War. Other statements have been made by NATO officials that the current buildup in Eastern Europe is the largest since the end of the Cold War, and these statements reflect reality. This is, in fact, what's going on. The U.S. has managed, through the mechanism of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, to establish permanent military installations, in many cases taking over air bases that could be used for strategic strikes against Russia. Two in Poland, one in Lithuania, one in Estonia, and elsewhere. The U.S. has acquired at least 9 military bases in Bulgaria and Romania, and the eastern part of the Black Sea, including at least 3 major air bases. And this is what's been going on gradually since and incrementally since NATO expansion began in 1999, but has been intensified with a vengeance in recent months, to the point where the world truly ought to be alarmed. Not just Europe, but the world ought to be alarmed, because what we are talking about, as the Russian President Putin mentioned yesterday at an event when he signaled that Russia is going to develop 40 new intercontinental ballistic missiles, is that we have a situation fraught with the potential of a direct military conflict between the world's 2 major nuclear powers. A story you've acquainted me with is that the U.S. is now trying to build up defenses against potential cruise missile attacks from Russia and perhaps other countries, so that we now see the kind of talk we haven't heard since the most dangerous period of the Cold War, even with missile threats and nuclear missile threats between the world's 2 major nuclear powers. And this is all entirely attributable, in my opinion, and because I believe that Ukraine is simply the pretense and not the genuine cause. It is all attributable to the fact that the U.S. has, in the post-Cold War period, used, expanded, ultimately on a global scale, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization as the first instance in history of a global military alliance, one that we have to recall not only has expanded from 16 to 28 members in the post-Cold War period, but which now takes in as many as 50 military partners, so that we're talking collectively almost half the nations in the world are either full members of NATO or partners in various capacities. So that the threat posed by the post-Cold War revival and expansion of NATO cannot be overestimated. It has the potential, quite literally, to lead our planet and its people towards the worst catastrophe in history, which would be a nuclear war.
Joining us now from Montreal via Skype is Michel Chossudovsky. He's with the Center for Research on Globalization. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, sir. Now, do you think it's in the NATO Secretary General's place to warn Russia against the situation in eastern Ukraine?
Well, I think NATO has the ability of turning realities upside down, because recent reports confirm that it is not Russia which is supporting the rebels, but NATO and the United States are supporting Ukraine, not only with so-called non-lethal weapons, but also with military advisors, training, and so on, and that in fact they are now providing core support not only to the armed forces but also to the neo-Nazi National Guard. And in fact, the US Congress debated this issue and they said, yes, we will support the National Guard, but we will not support the Azov Battalion. Other countries, such as Canada, are supporting the Azov Battalion, but I should say that, in effect, while the Azov Battalion has been recognized as a neo-Nazi entity, the right sector Nazi party has an oversight and control over the entire National Guard. And in recent developments, the Ukraine military has been bombing civilian areas, including schools. There's ample documents to that effect. And ironically, NATO is accusing the separatist forces of Donbass of killing their own people, so to speak, when in fact those strikes were perpetrated by Ukraine armed forces.
Right. So, Dr. Chizadovsky, basically you're saying that the U.S. and NATO have set the grounds to ensure that this grace period that there is of relative calm in eastern Ukraine is used to basically once again increase hostilities and ensure that there is no separatist movement left within eastern Ukraine. However, my question to you is, what does NATO get out of it?
Well, I think we have to look at the broader military agenda, because NATO, and when we say NATO, we are saying the United States. The United States and NATO are involved in war games on Russia's doorstep. They have several initiatives. They're moving military hardware to Eastern Europe. And this serves as an act of provocation directed against the Russian Federation. And they accuse Russia without evidence of supporting the rebels, when in fact they have their own troops right on Russia's doorstep supporting the Ukrainian government, which is an illegitimate government. And I think there's another element which has not been understood or even reported in the media, is that the president of Ukraine, President Poroshenko, has made the statement, and it's with the Ukraine Constitutional Court, that the coup directed against his predecessor Yanukovych was an illegal act and not a democratic transition. So that within Ukraine there is a leadership, there's division within the leadership. The country is in an extreme crisis following the imposition of the IMF deadly macroeconomic reforms and impoverishment of large sectors of the population. And within the armed forces, there are also divisions, and there's also a movement at the grassroots to refuse to fight. In other words, not